They built an empire with bare hands and bold dreams. A place where black families owned banks, hospitals, and entire city blocks. Greenwood was more than a neighborhood. It was freedom carved from oppression. Children walked to black-owned schools while parents ran their own companies. Doctors treated neighbors in clinics they built from scratch. Businessmen held board meetings in offices above jazz clubs and restaurants. It was power, pride, and prosperity in a world that told them they deserved none. But not everyone watched Greenwood with admiration. Jealousy, hatred, and white supremacy seethed beneath the surface. One false rumor, one scream in an elevator was all it took. And in a single night, decades of progress were burned to the ground. Airplanes dropped fire. Armed mobs murdered innocent families. The government looked away. Before we uncover the truth they tried to bury, like this video and subscribe now. 1. The power and pride of Greenwood. Greenwood was a neighborhood built by black Americans during a time of forced segregation. Cut off from white businesses, black entrepreneurs built their own banking and retail systems. They owned grocery stores, theaters, salons, law offices, and medical clinics. Booker T. Washington called it Negro Wall Street for its unmatched economic success. The community had over 10,000 black residents, many of them professionals and business owners. The dollar circulated multiple times within Greenwood before leaving the community. It had its own schools, libraries, post office, and even private planes. Families lived in large homes and dressed in fine clothing with pride. It was a living example of black excellence, and that made it a target. Jealousy and white supremacy began to boil beneath Tulsa's surface. 2. The spark that lit the fire. On May 30, 1921, a black teen named Dick Rowland entered an elevator downtown. Inside was a white teen elevator operator named Sarah Page. Something happened. No one knows what, but Sarah screamed. Rowland ran, and white newspapers claimed he assaulted her. There was no evidence, and Sarah never pressed charges. Still, police arrested Rowland and locked him in jail. A white lynch mob soon gathered outside, demanding his execution. Black war veterans arrived to protect Rowland with their weapons. Tensions escalated, and one gunshot set the riot in motion. It was the moment Greenwood's fate was sealed. 3. The Massacre of Black Wall Street. White mobs stormed Greenwood, looting homes and burning entire blocks to the ground. They set fire to schools, churches, hotels, and businesses, destroying everything in sight. Witnesses reported airplanes dropping firebombs over the neighborhood from above. Local police deputized white rioters and joined the violence instead of stopping it. Over 1,200 homes were burned and 35 city blocks destroyed. Black residents who fled were arrested and held in camps. Families were killed, businesses were looted, and bodies were thrown into mass graves. By the end, more than 300 people were believed to be dead. Insurance companies refused to pay for damages, calling it a riot. Greenwood was reduced to ashes, and the survivors had nothing left. What if everything you built could be taken in one night, simply because you succeeded? What if the sky above your home rained fire, not from war, but from your own countrymen? Imagine hiding your children while mobs tore down everything you ever worked for. That was Greenwood. That was Tulsa. No reparations were paid. No justice was delivered. The memory of Black Wall Street was almost erased from history. But now, the silence is breaking, and the truth demands to be heard. 4. Decades of silence and denial. After the massacre, the story was buried by silence and fear. No one was ever arrested or punished for the destruction or killings. Tulsa's white leaders blamed black citizens for provoking the violence. Schools did not teach what happened, even in Tulsa itself. Survivors were silenced and trauma passed from one generation to another. Newspapers and officials removed the event from records and archives. The massacre was deliberately hidden from national memory for nearly a century. No reparations were given, and no public acknowledgement was made for decades. Families grew up not knowing their own history. The truth was buried deep, but never forgotten by those who lived it. 5. rediscovery, and demands for justice. In the late 1990s, historians and survivors began to speak publicly. Mass graves were investigated, and new evidence began to surface. In 2001, an official report labeled the event a massacre, not a riot. Survivors testified before Congress and demanded recognition and reparations. Television and film revived public interest in the story of Greenwood. Books, documentaries, and educators began sharing what was once forbidden. In 2021, President Biden became the first sitting president to visit the massacre site. The legacy of Greenwood is now taught in some schools and honored publicly. But survivors and their families still seek justice, compensation, and a formal apology. The story is finally being heard, but the healing is far from over. The massacre of Black Wall Street was not just an attack. It was an erasure of success. It tried to destroy a thriving community built by strength, unity, and vision. For too long, it was forgotten, but truth cannot stay buried forever. Greenwood's story lives on because survivors refuse to let it disappear. It lives on in every voice that demands justice and truth. This history is not just Black history, it is American history. We must remember it, honor it, and learn from it. Only then can healing and accountability truly begin. If this story moves you, like this video and subscribe to our channel. Help us share the truth that history tried to erase.